Now, starting today, Parliament will sit for 9 days to debate the 2020 budget in a climate of economic uncertainty made worse by the coronavirus outbreak. Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Heng Swee Keat will respond on Friday, February 28th, and members of Parliament will then vote on the budget. About 50 MPs typically speak throughout the annual debate, with around 20 MPs slated for today. The hot topics this time include the government's planned aid for workers and businesses during the outbreak. The labour movement is bringing together 4,000 companies of various sizes to help quickly place retrenched PMETs in new jobs. A new Job Security Council will gather information on jobs and match workers from releasing companies to receiving companies. The 4,000 companies across various sectors employ a total of about 500,000 workers, and 90% of them are SMEs.
It's a growing concern among workers, especially those in their 40s, 50s, and more often PMEs, who find themselves displaced or retrenched because their skills have become redundant as technologies evolved. And if they are retrenched, they can take a long time to get back into a job, and one which may not pay as well or may not even fully utilize their skills. Although these numbers are not large, for the individual worker or PME who have mouths to feed and bills to pay, the situation can cause a lot of fear and anxiety. NTUC wants to ease this situation and help these workers and PMEs. NTUC is therefore piloting the NTUC Job Security Council to improve the matching of displaced or retrenched workers into new jobs.
There were also calls from MPs who urged for speedier short-term support to help firms cope with the coronavirus outbreak, despite the $4 billion stabilisation and support package announced last week by Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance Heng Swee Keat. Some suggestions include expediting support for businesses and workers, as well as expanding the coverage for vulnerable groups.
Well, to tell us more is news editor for the Straits Times, Zakir Hussain. Welcome, Zakir.
Hi.
So, we just highlighted two issues. First, MPs said today that while the stabilisation and support package was comprehensive, they said that more help may be needed. So, what exactly are the MPs' main concerns there?
Okay. I think the main concerns are two things. One is this current outbreak, which has been with us for well over a month now. Right now, there's no certainty on how long it may go on for. Right. In the past week alone, we've seen it spread to South Korea, the Middle East, Europe,
Italy, yeah.
And you know, even with just China being affected, a lot of hotels here have seen occupancy drop from 85% to lows of like 30-35%. Some tourist attractions have seen numbers drop by 80-90%. It's even locals afraid of going out and so on. So there is a real pinch that businesses on the ground are feeling, and there's a sense that some of the MPs reflected that the initial job support for 3 months may not be enough. The other concern was the timing. For administrative reasons, some of these schemes may take time to implement. So, for instance, the payouts to all companies to help them ease the burden will only be out in July, say. Right?
You're talking about the job support scheme.
The job support scheme, yeah. And even though the skills future top-up for the skills future for mid-career workers, that again will only be out later in the year. So they're sort of wondering whether, in some of the speeches today, they made the point or raised suggestions that perhaps more could be done to help them tap on these schemes earlier. There were no sort of official responses today, because DPM Heng will be responding on Friday when he rounds up the budget debate. But he was furiously taking notes, and so were some of the other ministers. Right.
Well, also something else that we brought up, the new Job Security Council to help retrenched PMETs find new jobs. Can you tell us more, please?
Yeah. So increasingly, and it's not just with COVID, but even before COVID, for the past year or so, a lot of the labour union members and leaders had been discussing, is there a way to help PMETs, who are, especially PMETs in their 40s and 50s, who are at risk of, being retrenched. It's a tough struggle for them to sort of be rehired or reemployed, in a quick time frame. And what the labour movement decided was they've got a training institute, E2I, and they tried to get as many companies on board to sort of better match companies that were about to release workers, right, with companies that actually were in need of talent and labor and so on. And sometimes where there's a skills gap, you can help both sides really by retraining that worker, so he gets a better fit and gets better placed with a job. It's still early days, I mean, it's a trial, but the fact that I think more than 4,000 companies have signed up for it, they're from a wide range of sectors. Many of them are SMEs, which on their own wouldn't have these resources to help their workers. I think that's a good start.
Well, I guess, how else can the council benefit workers?
I guess in a way, workers would also be better placed to find out, some of these workers might prefer to be in an area where they're familiar with, right? They might prefer to say transit from one IT role to another IT role. Or some might be keen to switch to an entirely different sector, say from security to data security.
Right.
Cybersecurity.
Okay. Well, the budget debate just started today. Full day of discussions. What else was addressed in Parliament that piqued your interest?
I think before the budget debate, there were a couple of concerns about COVID raised, right? And how, with the 5-day sick leave, how this might affect some employees, especially those with very limited medical leave requirements. I think the Ministry of Manpower says more details will be out tomorrow. And I think some of the other points that were raised, I mean, even though a lot of the focus of the speeches was on jobs and how workers can benefit, I think some of the MPs did touch on issues like sustainability, as well as this, a sense of community spirit and helping one another, which you saw in recent weeks with SG United, where Singaporeans kind of mobilized to help healthcare workers and so on. I think there's some discussion on maybe how we could highlight these examples and how, in a way, the budget isn't just about the numbers and the financial help, but about how we can encourage more such community spirit and civic mindedness among people.
Absolutely, great points. Thank you so much for joining us, Zakir.
Thanks, Olivia.
That was Zakir Hussain, the Straits Times news editor, and you can keep up to date with the budget debate on straitstimes.com.